Hi, folks. Good morning. All right, I like that. Welcome, All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. We're so glad to have you with us today. And I didn't know how popular our live feed was until I started getting calls from some of my relatives. So, hi, Mom. It's kind of a unique thing. She says the quality is fantastic and the sound is great, and she gets to hear me and Anthony as well. And we're so glad you're here this morning. Is there anybody visiting us today that would like to say hello and welcome themselves? Well, I tell you what, you're always welcome. Whenever we're here. Out front is our welcoming committee. Stop by if you'd like some more information about our church. We're so glad to have you here with us today. Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome once again to the gathering of this covenant community of memory and promise. In this hour of reflection, we are invited to acknowledge that the world goes too fast for us to say all the stories that fill our lives. We struggle for the words and for the friends who would listen, that would witness this much beauty, this relentless loss with its grinding demand for survival, this courage to continue on, claiming confidence and joy in the journey. Here in this place, let us mark time as if it is our friend, not running away, but offering itself with new abundance like a gift, ready to confer healing and mercy in the breathing together and the silence, in the paying attention, in the music, and in the mystery. Let us acknowledge also that not everything can be fixed in an hour. Not everything can be forgiven or saved. But here, let us remember that this is how we begin, moment by moment, making and remaking our lives. One choice, one naming, one spark of hope, one willing yes at a time. In token of that spark of hope, we kindle, as always, this chalice flame. May it shine in the darkness of the season and in the darkness of the world as our unquenchable yes to the promise of new life. In its light, may we find courage to risk the truth of our stories, hope to hold us, and love to heal us, and faith to find the holy in our most human moments.
Good morning. My name is Khalil, and I light this chalice for the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you. Now let's rise in body and spirit as we are able, and speak once more the words of our community's covenant. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant. to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And will you remain standing for our opening song?
The season of Advent is a season of waiting. This waiting and this anticipation are radical acts in a culture of instant gratification. They are radical acts in a season usually dedicated to hustle and bustle. What would it look like to dedicate some of our time to waiting, to patience, to stillness? And what is it that we're waiting for? Maybe we are waiting to see if an adoption will go through. Or maybe we are holding our breath for our results to come back. Maybe we are anticipating spending time with friends and family in all of its beauty and complication. Maybe we are just waiting to get through this holiday season, knowing that it provides reminders of recent losses. In a religious tradition that celebrates human agency and action, sometimes waiting is a hard sell. Waiting can be infuriating and cause us to become impatient. But what might it look like to focus on the growth and development that sometimes comes with patience and stillness? Please join me in song as we sing the children to their classes.
Maybe not. I think I've wrecked the phone. What? I think it's not on the thing. We can just make it.
We'll do our best.
Go now in peace. May love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness in your deeds, faith to follow where the human spirit leads.
Today is our final opportunity to share our collection with the UU United Nations Office. This is one of a constellation of non-governmental organizations that advises and lobbies the United Nations in its work for humanitarian causes around the globe, bringing our Unitarian Universalist values to bear in an organization that is a reflection and a product of those values to begin with. So please let us be generous in our support for the ongoing work of the UUNO. The offering for this morning will now be received gratefully. Will you join me in the words of dedication for the offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a just and compassionate society. All the goals of our All Souls mission are derailed when women suffer sexual harassment and harm. You don't have a community that is either respectful or caring. You don't have a society that is either compassionate or just. And it's difficult to engage in spiritual growth when you are afraid or ashamed or alarmed by what other people have done to you and might do again at any moment. And that's true no matter what gender you are or look like. When someone touches us without our permission or makes sexually suggestive comments out of context, or demands sexual behavior in return for anything, they rob us of power and safety and freedom. And worst of all, they often make it seem as if it's our own fault if we don't like it. The hashtag #MeToo movement has emerged out of the recognition that in order to regain our power and our freedom, we must first be assured that none of us is alone in our experience, and then name the truth of that experience, that it is wrong and it is not our fault. Sometimes it is hard for us to believe how not alone we are. Sometimes it is hard for those who don't experience this threat to understand how pervasive it is. Sometimes it's easier to believe that such things happen out there, but not here among ourselves. And so this morning, I invite us into an act of courage and witness. I invite us to help those who have this experience to reclaim their freedom and their power, and to show that we are indeed not alone. Remembering to breathe deeply and take courage. And then once more, to take the breath in, let the breath out, and pause, poised as we are at a point of risking, at a possibility of being brave. risking vulnerability, risking pain, risking being known, risking not being believed, risking being believed, risking so much, including leaving the shadows behind and stepping into the healing light, risking being brave. I invite anyone in this room who identifies as a woman and who understand yourselves to be included in the #MeToo movement, this moment in time when women are stating publicly that we have been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted or sexually harmed, any one of these or all of them, I invite you to come forward and be with me and stay with me to show that we are not alone. And if you are so moved, to add your stone to this silent well of tears.
May I take two?
Mm-hmm. Dick, I'm going to suggest that we're not going to take pictures at the moment, and I will also assure you that we have turned the camera away, so if that's a concern, feel free to come up. I add these stones, more than one, for those in this room who are not yet ready to come forward. Did I lose my technology people?
Sorry.
I'm glad you came up, but can I have you back? So those stones are for those who are not yet ready to come forward, but who know the truth of your story and are part also of #MeToo. We honor your choice not to come forward at this time, but please know that I and others are here for you. And I add these stones also for those who identify as men and have been sexually harassed or sexually assaulted or sexually harmed. I know that you are here, and your tears too are present. I invite us all to recognize that this cultural moment does not offer the same space that is safe for men to name themselves in this way, even though the pain is no less real. Please know that I and others are here for you as well. And now I invite anyone in the room who knows someone or loves someone, regardless of their gender, who has been sexually harassed, sexually assaulted, or sexually harmed, any of these or all of them. I invite you to rise in body or lift your hands, add your committed witness to those who have risked coming forward, who have risked being brave. Let us bring our full intention to this act of courage, of witness, of solidarity. Let us notice and see, truly see, the pain in this room and the possibility. Let us commit in the quiet of our own hearts to do whatever you can to stop any future harm. And may we build and ever rebuild the world where safety and equality and justice, wholeness and integrity are the air we breathe. Thank you. And let us be seated and join our voices in the words of response and then in song. Both broken and whole, let's join our voices together. I will try to be brave. So if you are not feeling brave, you can have some of mine. And if I am not feeling brave, I will borrow some of yours. We will add our brave together, add it all up, so that our brave together light will outshine the shadow.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Saying there's a sex panic on the grounds that women don't like having their asses grabbed is the 2017 way of calling women frigid. In the 1950s, the woman who slapped a man's face for an unwanted grope was mocked for not being sexually open, for being uptight. Now she's accused of participating in a sex panic. But it's all the same thing across the generations. When women stand up to say, "Keep your hands off me," there's a good chance they'll be called prudes. Saying there's a sex panic is a fancy way of saying that women's bodies don't completely belong to them in the way that their cars do. Someone can damage a woman's car in a very small way, and insurance companies take it seriously and pay for the repair. She owns that car and has every right to protect it. But if someone grabs her butt without permission, she needs to lighten up. What is she, a frigid bitch? I remember a very long time ago, because I am old now and blessedly free from most male sexual aggression, the first time I was groped. It was a crowded bus. A hand came out of nowhere, and what happened was so shocking to me, so intimate and wrong, that I stood there stunned. I wasn't even angry yet. I was just mortified. Afterward, I started telling people, expecting that they would be outraged on my behalf. But the response was very different. The weary way of the world instruction, that's how it is. Even my mother, who had taught me so carefully from such an early age, and in so many ways that my body was mine, was hardly riled by the story. "Bastard," she said when I told her, and that was it. You learn early on, if you're female, that your body mostly belongs to you. But if you're going to make a big fuss, every time a hand grabs you on a crowded bus or train, every time a man forces a wet, unwanted kiss on you, you're going to become something men really don't like: bitter. And so you come to accept that for the most part, your body belongs to you. But in a small way, a little bit of it belongs to the men of the world. And I am reminded of the ancient words that washed over me in churches of my childhood and the college chapels of my late adolescence, in the cathedrals and outdoor masses of my early life on my own. This is my body, which is given up for you.
This is taken from Teaching the Virtues by Christina Hoff Sommers. In the 19th century, the ethics course was a high point in college life. It was taken in the senior year and was usually taught by the president of the college, pardon me, who would uninhibitedly urge the students to become morally better and stronger. The senior ethics course was, in fact, the culmination of the students' college experience. But as the social sciences began to flourish in the 20th century, ethics courses gradually lost prominence until they became just one of several electives offered by philosophy departments. By the mid-1960s, enrollment in courses on moral philosophy reached an all-time low. And as one historian of higher education put it, college ethics are in deep trouble. Because the typical course in applied ethics today concentrates on problems and dilemmas, the students may easily lose sight of the fact that some things are clearly right and some are clearly wrong, that some ethical truths are not subject to serious debate. I recently said something to this effect during a television interview in Boston. and the skeptical interviewer immediately asked me to name some uncontroversial ethical truths. Well, after stammering for a moment, I found myself rattling off several that I hold to be uncontroversial. It's wrong to mistreat a child. It is wrong to humiliate someone. To torment an animal. To think only of yourself. To steal. It's wrong to lie. It's wrong to break promises. And on the positive side, it's right to be considerate and respectful of others, to be charitable and to be generous. I am aware that not everyone will agree that all of these are plain moral facts. What I am suggesting is that we may have some responsibility for providing the student with what the philosopher Henry Sedgwick called, quote, moral common sense, end quote. More generally, I am suggesting that we should assess some of the courses we teach for the course's edification. What I'm recommending is not new, has worked before, and is simple. Schools should have behavior codes that emphasize civility, kindness, self-discipline, honesty, and fairness. Children should be told stories that reinforce goodness. In high school and in college, students should be reading, studying, and discussing moral classics. I am suggesting that teachers must help children become acquainted with their moral heritage in literature, in religion, and in philosophy. I am suggesting that virtue can be taught and that effective moral education appeals to the emotions as well as to the mind. The best moral teaching inspires students by making them keenly aware that their own character is at stake.
It will probably be helpful if I begin with a reminder of something I have said before in other contexts, which is this. I do not believe that we are fallen creatures living in a fallen world. I don't believe in either the Garden of Eden or the egalitarian matriarchal paradise. I don't believe that once upon a time, everything was beautiful and kind and nonviolent and easy. I believe that we are creatures of evolution, living in a world of struggle. I believe that we are not fallen but risen beings, risen and rising, striving to understand and overcome the impulses of violence and domination that are an inherent part of our genetic heritage. If we humans are, as I suspect based on the similarities in the relevant DNA, descended from the same ancestral line as the great apes of today, then the use of sexuality in the establishment of dominance hierarchies is not some recent revoltant development of modern society and capitalism. Like infanticide and other unattractive features of natural selection, the potential is part of our innate hardwiring as a social species, a given that we must decide not to manifest. The term sexual predator is not arbitrary. Predation of all types is instinctive behavior and not easily suppressed. That said, I invite you to notice the extent to which human society as we know it is predicated upon the suppression of our instincts. Thank goodness. Who wants to live in a culture where people relieve themselves anywhere the impulse strikes them? One significant property of our evolutionary investment in oversized brains is the capacity to resist the very inclinations that are embedded in our genes. We have the ability to choose strategies more complex and long-term than natural selection, to achieve envisioned satisfactions beyond reproductive success. It serves us well, I think, not to forget that genetic motive. It lurks always in the background, often framing our choices unseen. Now and again, we need to haul it out into the light and recognize its power so as to uncover its rationalizations and renew our commitments, if we have them, to other choices. It looks to me like this is such a moment in contemporary culture. And it is not a coincidence that this occurs as a generation of women rises who were, for the most part, educated on the theory that their rights and powers were supposed to be equal to those of men. Not that they were equal, mind you, but that they were supposed to be. I think of myself as part of the preceding generation of women who made that argument, who knew very well that the role of women as it was presented to us was in no way equal, and who staked the claim that there was no justification for that disparity. We tried, both as individual mothers and collectively, to teach our daughters not to buy it, not to fall into the trap of being taken care of, which is learned helplessness. And I think that in large part we succeeded. My young colleagues in ministry give me such hope, especially the women. And I am fiercely glad and fiercely proud of that. As I experienced it, both for myself and in the process of nurturing others, we were too busy seeking actual jobs with equal paychecks and actual political office with real votes in the legislature and actual cars and mortgages and credit cards in our own names and actual graduate degrees and real pulpits to be distracted by the age-old annoyances of despicable men who wanted to cop a feel or like to see us blush. We were on a march toward genuine power, and nothing that trivial was going to get in our way. It was a double bind, you see. If we made a fuss, we were demonstrating that we were too sensitive and fragile to be allowed into the workshops of true authority. Couldn't take a joke, wouldn't play along, were bitter, frigid, not able to be one of the boys. Better to say nothing, we decided. Get over it, smile, and be strategic, suck it up. The best revenge is success. So we comforted each other, taught each other techniques to deal with the inevitable, but never challenged whether it was indeed inevitable. Which meant that those men, too, went right on believing that their behavior was inevitable and therefore acceptable. When you're a star, as the current president once observed, they let you do it. But here is what we also know and always knew. And trust me, this is not a defense. It's evidence for the prosecution. Not all men were like that. Not all men are like that. Which means that no man has to be like that. And just to be clear, since the abuse of power is not unique to men, no woman has to be like that either. To assert dominance through sexual gestures anywhere on the spectrum from trivial to traumatic may be an instinctive impulse, but it is still a conscious choice and a cultural artifact. Every individual person in every unique circumstance has options about it. And how our society thinks about it and talks about it or keeps silent and teaches about it and responds to it affects us all, which is why it is ultimately, even in its most petty ickiness, a moral and religious issue. Now, there are those who claim with some indignation that the rules have suddenly changed, and they should not be held accountable for behavior that was okay as far as they knew when they did it, and no one complained about it at the time, at least publicly. On the other hand, there are men like Mike Pence who practice a set of rules that are meant to protect them from their own impulses by famously never dining alone with a woman other than his wife and never attending any event where alcohol is served without her being present. Aside from the fact that most of the men I know are quite clever enough to observe any number of such rules and still make themselves sexually obnoxious to the women around them if they choose to, these boundaries miss the point. As with the hair-splitting questioner who wants to know, how much can I get away with and still go to heaven? It's the mindset itself that is the problem. Which brings me back to Christina Hoff Sommers and my own undergraduate study in philosophy of ethics. Here's what I recall that might be useful. There were 3 types of ethical theories: utilitarian, rule-based, and character-based. The utilitarian is outcome-focused, often presented as what decision supplies the greatest good to the greatest number. Its formal name is teleological because telos means end or result. Rule-based ethics, in turn, are known as deontological, deon being Greek for duty. Theories like this suggest that you decide your principles or rules of duty in advance of any particular situations, and then right action consists of adhering to those principles consistently, regardless of the outcome. By implication, this suggests that if an action is not against the rules of duty, it is okay, regardless of the outcome. I want to propose that neither of these first two approaches are of much use to us in pondering the morality of sexual harassment. Teleological ethics, or utilitarianism, makes the untenable suggestion that we must somehow calculate whether the perpetrator takes more pleasure from an act of assault than the victim receives injury. This is the implication of the tawdry defense, "I meant no harm," which suggests that the perpetrator has already decided that his own gratification would be greater than any damage the person who is the object of his attentions would experience. Such a calculation is not only impossible from a practical perspective, it is irrelevant. The violation of one individual's personal space, privacy, sense of safety, and bodily integrity is not justifiable, no matter how much pleasure someone else receives from doing it. Rules, as I said a moment ago, do not get us to the heart of the matter either. Rather, they remind me of the squabbling siblings in the back seat of the car, one of whom, being told not to touch the other, beguiles the time by testing how close he can move his hand toward the other's knee, hoping to provoke protest while maintaining his technical innocence. The point is not whether or not he breaches the specific boundary. His will is to torment his fellow passenger. We will never succeed at defining the rules of all social interactions so minutely as to stymie a person with evil intent. If one wishes to use whatever power they have to sexually exploit or humiliate another, it will always be possible to do so and to feign injured virtue when called out. So that leaves us with the third category of moral theory, character ethics. This approach suggests that right action is determined not merely by outcomes or rules, but rather by what kind of person you are trying to become. Our actions manifest the virtues that we are either cultivating or neglecting. It is by doing kind things that we become generous, by facing our fears that we become brave, by telling the truth again and again consistently that we become honest. Merely obeying rules will not give you character. Indeed, rules are a kind of artificial virtue for the convenience of those who have no internalized principles of character. From this perspective, the question is simple. Do you want to be the kind of person in whose presence other people are safe from abuse? It has nothing to do with how much can I get away with while staying within the letter of the law. It has nothing to do with I didn't mean anything by it, I was just kidding around. It is this and only this. Do you actually want to treat the women around you with respect? Do you want to be the kind of person who uses your power with integrity and keeps healthy boundaries around your own and others' sexuality? Because you cannot be that person and at the same time gratify your instincts to touch and dominate and embarrass and provoke and harass people with your body or your words or your photographs or your laughter. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't all actually have plenty to learn, both as individuals and as a society. As Professor Summers suggests, this used to be part of the agenda of academia, to urge students to be about the business of cultivating character. It used to be that a person without internalized moral principles could not be considered fully educated. Even more did that used to be the business of religious community, to summon its members to lives of moral excellence, not through self-righteous rule monitoring, and not through collective political outrage either, but rather through aspiration to ideals that invited us into the exercise of self-awareness and intention about our inner growth. Back in the day, at least so I am told, that meant that men of character protected the virtue of women because women were by definition vulnerable and lacked the power to protect themselves. Now, believe me, that is not a trade-off I am willing to reinstate. If I have to use my power as an equal human being to defend myself from sexual harassment and harm, I will do so, rather than surrender that power in exchange for someone else's protection. But I see no reason why we cannot live in a world where men of character, indeed people of character, are expected not to use their power to take sexual advantages, either gross or minor, of other people. I see no reason why my body should only mostly belong to me. I recognize that this is expecting people to make choices different from those suggested by our basest instincts, and I don't have a problem with that. All successful civilization depends on that ability. The only question is, which impulses do we require to be controlled? Here's the key to the riddle, in my view. As long as women as a category have significantly less power than men as a category, it will never really be culturally required that men restrain whatever urges they may have to gratify themselves with women's bodies and attentions without regard to what those women think or feel about it. When we reach a tipping point of social and economic power in the hands of women, the popular norms about this will shift, and the rules, indeed, will change. What will not change is that there will always be, and always have been, men who did not do these things, regardless of the cultural permission, which means that such behavior is and has always been a choice. Wanting to know how to get away with as much harassment as possible before you get into trouble means that you are already a certain kind of person. Now, I have to believe that anyone who is spending their Sunday morning sitting in this room, affirming this covenant and supporting this mission, aspires to be better than that, which is why character ethics matter, and the more power you have, the more they matter. If rules help you, fine, use them. Never be alone in a room with anyone you are not married to. But that is no substitute for wanting to be the kind of person who doesn't abuse other people. We all live in the atmosphere of patriarchy and white supremacy. I have to assume that there is plenty of oppression I participate in with complete cluelessness. But I am not trying to figure out just how much privilege I can exercise before I get called out. Rather, I am trying to become the kind of person who does not want those invisible advantages, who operates out of respect, kindness, and a belief in equality, regardless of what I might be able to get away with. if you are the type of person who does not wish for women to be diminished, then you don't diminish them. You don't brag about touching them without permission. You don't mug for the camera as if you were assaulting them. You don't impose yourself on them sexually without their active, conscious consent. Pay attention, people. These are examples, not the start of a list of rules. Do you see the difference? Moreover, if a woman tells you that certain behavior makes her feel diminished, you don't argue with her about your motivations. You cut it out. And you ask yourself, what was going on in your head and your heart and your gut that made you feel that it was a good thing to do in the first place? By the way, don't tell me that you don't have the wit to do the gender translation and recognize that you don't do these things to men either, because that's not the kind of person you want to be either. Oh, dear ones, there is so much struggle and pain in the world. Why? Oh, why should any of us make it more difficult for others? Surely that is not what we are going for. Not who we most deeply hope to be to our fellow humans. What we truly want is so much better than that. The world that we long to live in together, the world that we talk about, not merely justice but goodwill. Not only safety, but mutual service. Not just keeping our hands to ourselves like our parents always said, but actually helping one another. Not just restraining our basest instincts, but rising to the better angels of our nature in love and truth and peace. We are in this together, after all. There's no choice about that. Let's bring our best selves to the project, the ones we have always known that we can and ought to be. Let's stand and sing.
That might not mercy. someone calls on me for understanding, let them not look my way for aid in vain, or drain alone the bitter cup of sorrow, but find a friend to help them bear the pain. When someone suffers, may I know that heartache and share my strength to make the broken whole. I would bring hope where there is fear and danger. I would uplift and honor every soul.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. So let us practice compassion, my friends, for everyone you meet is carrying hidden wounds and unseen burdens. And remember this: you are not now, nor have you ever been, alone. From the beginning of time, the human heart has sought its source in love. You are that source. You are that love. Go in peace.
He has a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple or space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love.
Smells good out here. Somebody's cooking something. Oh. Wow. Where does this get hidden again, Flynn?
Oh.
Down here? Oh, okay. Just anywhere. Oh, there's a drawer even. Who would have thought? Oh, I did.
Okay.
How are you doing?